So, namaste and good evening, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to all of you to today's session of Mahatma Letters. As you know, we are studying letter number 93A and 93B, which is a question and answer, which is in question and answer format. Sinet has asked questions and Mahatma KH has answered to him. So we will continue this session, and before we go on to the session, today is also the occasion of Mahashivratri, so greetings to all of you. In fact, all of you who study Theosophy, you should take a moment to realize what is Shiv. Shiv, which is the seventh principle in the constitution of man and also of the cosmos. So let us begin our session with the universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Thank you and welcome back. So in this letter, in our last session, we were studying question number 10, in which Sinet had asked Mahatma Ji that is the photometric value of light, giving a correct indication of the magnitude of the stars. And Mahatma Ji had mentioned to it that there is no trustworthy method. The photometric method is also not trustworthy. One, because the stars are very much distant from the Earth, about 5 lakh to 10 lakh times more than the distance between Earth and Sun. And there are other factors like the strongly magnetic meteoric matter and also the tremors of Earth's atmosphere. So they are an obstacle in measuring the intensity of the star. Therefore, photometric value of light, it does not correctly indicate the magnitude of the stars. Also, at that time, scientists were using another method, polarization of light. So Mahatma Ji says that polarization of light is also not trustworthy. Now, what does polarization mean? Light is a electromagnetic radiation. So there are so many frequencies in that radiation. And when all these frequencies, they travel in a single plane as the light is propagating through space. If all the frequencies, they lie in a single plane, then it is known as polarized light. So Mahatma Ji tells Sinet that even polarization of light is not a trustworthy method. Now we will continue from that point further. So in this same answer, Mahatma Ji is saying that the conclusions of modern science, whatever are its astronomical prophecies or conclusions, they cannot be altogether invalidated just because the photometric method is not trustworthy or because polarization of light is not a trustworthy method. That does not mean that we should invalidate all the conclusions of modern science. And that is because that whatever conclusions or prophecies are drawn, they are mathematically correct in their mutual correlations. So if you see the relativity between them, there is a mathematical correctness. So they can be considered. But in contrast to this, he says that consider that the old civilizations, the ancient civilizations of the Chaldees, and also our own ancient rishis, they were able to make faultless astronomical predictions without the help of any modern scientific instrument. So you can imagine what was the level of knowledge and the level of spiritual evolution of those ancient people. Now, further, Mahatma Ji is clarifying. This is a continuation of answer 10. Okay. So Mahatma Ji is clarifying that he is giving such detailed information, such detailed answers to Sinet because he wants to instruct Sinet in occultism. These are instructions for a student of occultism. They are not only answers to be written in any journal of science. And that is why this letter is so long. Sinet is asking one question, but Mahatma Ji is giving him a lot of information around that topic, okay, in addition to his answer. So if we really intend to become students of occultism, then we must study all these instructions very carefully. All these answers which are given by Mahatma Ji, they are based on and they are derived from the Eastern occult doctrines. Though they may not agree with modern science, but these doctrines, they are Mahatma, the adepts and the Mahatmas, they know them for a fact. So when Sinet further asked that does the sun emit maximum possible light per square mile of its surface area? So Mahatma Ji questions him, does he know what he means by light? Now these are very basic topics which children in school today they are studying in physics. Heat, light, magnetism, right? Mahatma Ji is asking Sinet, does he understand what he means by light? Now light is not an independent principle. So also heat and actinism are not. Now heat and light we understand. Now what is actinism? Actinism is the property that the solar radiation or the solar energy, it gets absorbed by a chemical molecule. Say for example, chlorophyll in plants. Chlorophyll absorbs that solar radiation and it is used to produce a photochemical or a photobiological effect. We know photosynthesis, which takes place in plants. So this process of absorbing that solar energy and then converting it into a photobiological effect, that is known as actinism. And Mahatma Ji is telling Sinet that neither light, nor heat, nor this actinism, they are not independent principles. Everything that we see, every phenomena that we see, which is occurring due to this heat, light, actinism, etc., they are basically the effects of the diverse motions of Akash. This is what Mahatma Ji tells Sinet. And this is as per the ancient theories of the occult science, that every phenomena is the effect of diverse motions of Akash. There is in fact only the one element, and that one element, it is the causative principle of all. It is the cause of everything else that we see in manifestation. That is called the one element. Now, to understand this, you must always remember the septenary constitution, whether of macrocosm or of microcosm. So when you say the one element, it is the highest or the seventh, or perhaps even beyond the seventh, because from that one, everything else differentiates. So to answer Sinet's question, Mahatma Ji tells him that scientists, they cannot be sure that the sun emits maximum possible light per square mile of its surface area because they have no sure means of measuring the velocity of light. Now see here what we are studying in our academics today, that the speed of light, it is taken as a constant, right? It is taken as 186,000 miles per second. In the letter, Mahatma Ji has mentioned 185,000 miles per second. But he's saying that there is no sure method of measuring this velocity of light. And whatever experimental methods were used by the scientists of that 19th century, Fizeau and Cornu, their data was not trustworthy, neither about the velocity nor about the quantity of light. And Mahatma Ji tells that the shortcoming of the instrument, it is due to the shortcoming of the instrument that was used. And he explains in detail in the letter what kind of instrument was used for this experiment. And he says that it is the shortcoming of the instrument. And also another fact, that sunlight has to travel through different quality of medium in the space. Okay, when the light is coming from the sun to the earth, it is traveling through space. It has to travel through the meteoric mass, that magnetic mass, which is the meteoric dust, which is above the earth's atmosphere, right? It impedes the progress of the sun's ray. And also then it has to pass through the atmosphere and then it has to reach those instruments. And the instruments themselves, they are faulty. So how can the correct speed of light be measured? And Mahatma Ji says that they will soon find out that the scientists, they are wrong in measuring the speed of light as 185,000 miles per second. Currently, it is taken as 186,000 miles per second. But I'm sure that would also be nowhere correct, because Mahatma Ji says for that they should measure light above the Earth's atmosphere, not within. But how do we take a laboratory up there above the Earth's atmosphere? Okay. So these are the various problems which are posed for modern science in measuring these things regarding the sun and the light. Then we move on to the next question, the 11th question. 11th question, Sinet is asking Mahatma Ji, is Jupiter a hot and still partially luminous body? And due to what cause are the violent disturbance of Jupiter's atmosphere? We know the Jupiter has a violent atmosphere and that red spot of Jupiter. So the question is about, is Jupiter still partially luminous body? See, all the other planets, they shine due to the reflected light of the sun. Sunlight falls and then they reflect that sunlight, so they shine. But here the question is Jupiter has its luminosity itself? Is it a self-shining, partially luminous body? So Mahatma Ji tells him that so far, Jupiter is a hot and still partially luminous body, but that is fast changing. And he tells Sinet, imagine if suppose the Earth is placed in very, very cold conditions, then what will happen? In extreme cold conditions, all the water bodies on Earth, they will start solidifying. Liquid water will become solid. And even the gaseous air of the Earth's atmosphere, it will start becoming liquid because there is no heat. It is very cold. So due to that extreme cold, what is happening? That whatever is in the gas form, it is becoming liquid, and whatever is in liquid form, that is becoming solid. Now he says that at present, Jupiter is in the reverse condition, meaning it is in a very, very high heat. And due to that heat, what is happening? Whatever is solid, it is liquefying. And whatever is liquid, it is becoming airy form. It is becoming gaseous. Our whole solar system, Mahatma Ji is saying, our entire solar system, it is moving through space, although imperceptibly. We cannot make out that the entire solar system itself is moving, because motion is always relative to some frame of reference. Okay. Now, we see that the relative distance between planets, it remains the same. And also distance between the solar system and the stars, in whatever way science is measuring it, we see that it remains the same. So because of this, we cannot perceive any change. We cannot perceive that the solar system is moving. Okay, but Mahatma Ji says that in millenniums, after millenniums, only then we might realize this movement. And as of now, even astronomers, they cannot know. Even if they look through their telescopes, they will not know that the solar system is moving. So what happens due to this movement of the solar system? Now, about this planet Jupiter. This Jupiter is it appears like a small point of shining body. Okay, so it's a luminous body, but it appears like a small point. It is hiding so many millions upon millions of stars. It is hiding behind it. Some 5,000 to 6,000 stars, they are hidden behind this luminous body of Jupiter. But because of the movement of the sun, what will happen? The position will gradually shift of the planets also. So Jupiter will also shift. And then suddenly, whatever other stars behind it, they will be visible. And Mahatma Ji says that there are few of the Raj suns which are now hiding behind Jupiter. Raj sun is the king star. And there is such a king star right behind Jupiter, which no mortal physical eye has ever seen during our present round. So in this round, no one has seen it till now because of the position of the entire solar system. But as the solar system will move, the position of the planets will shift, and then that star, the Raj sun, it will become visible. And this Raj sun, it is thousands of times larger than Jupiter. It is the violent atmosphere of Jupiter and even its red spot. It is due to the influence of the Raj sun, and also due to the shifting of our solar system. So even though this Raj sun is presently imperceptible, it is so tiny because it is so far, it is imperceptibly small. But the metallic substances out of which it is made, it is composed of metallic substances, they are expanding and gradually transforming themselves into aeriform fluids. That means they are becoming liquid. Metallic substance are becoming liquid and then gaseous. Okay, it's becoming in the form of gas. And Mahatma Ji says that this was the state of our own Earth and its 6 sister globes before the first round. Presently, we are in the 4th round. Okay, first round started, as Theosophy tells us, that when the life principles were transferred from Moon chain to the Earth chain, then the first round of Earth chain began. So before that, the state of Earth was as has been described of this Raj sun. So Mahatma Ji says to all the learners of this occult science that you may draw your own inferences and deductions from this. So he has not elaborated what it is, but we can think that it might be the state of matter, the nebulous conditions, out of which then the solar system was gradually formed. So this completes answer 11, and then we move on to question 12, which Sinet asks. So Sinet is asking here, is there any truth in the new Siemens theory of solar combustion? That is, that the sun in its passage through space gathers in at the poles combustible gas, which is diffused through all space in a highly attenuated condition, and throws it off again at the equator after the intense heat of that region has again dispersed the elements which combustion temporarily united. So as the sun is moving through space, is it gathering all this gas which is present in the space? Is it gathering the gas at the poles of the sun? Just like Earth has its axial poles, same way the sun also has it. So is the gas being collected there? And then is it being thrown off at the equator of the sun? These are some of the questions he asks. So Mahatma Ji says that the sun that we see, it is only a reflection. It gathers nothing at the poles. And the poles are also free from the corona, the red flames of the corona, which we had seen in the earlier question. There was a question about the corona, and Mahatma Ji had explained that corona is the magnetic aura of the sun. So the poles are not only free of any gases, they are also free of the coronal red flames at all times. Although it is true that the interstellar space, it is filled with highly attenuated matter which is very subtle. It is barely there, okay, attenuated. But this has got no bearing upon the poles of the sun. The sun does not collect anything at the poles. The sun gives back everything. Sun gives everything to the system of worlds which depend on the sun, that is the solar system. It takes back nothing from its system. And nothing can reach the sun from outside the boundaries of its own system. And we cannot even think that any such gross matter, like all those interstellar gases, even though they may be attenuated, nothing of that sort reaches the sun. In fact, every bit of matter, and matter, remember, has 7 states. So every bit of matter in all the 7 states, it is necessary to build up all these different worlds which are part of the solar system. It is necessary for the vitality of those worlds, in the formation of the worlds. Worlds means all these planetary systems, the planetary chains, which are part of the solar system. So all the matter in all its 7 states is necessary for that. There is no matter to spare anywhere to give to any other planet or any other sun. Okay. So what Mahatma Ji says, that there is only one thing, that is the radiant energy. which is inexhaustible. It can never be consumed. It is inexhaustible. And that radiant energy, it neither increases or decreases. It continues to do its self-generating work. That means the one law is working. The self-generating work is going on, but through that radiant energy. It is spawning new worlds, new stars, new planets. And this will continue up to the end of the solar Manvantar. It is true that our Earth absorbs a lot of solar forces. But Mahatma Ji is now telling what is the amount of these solar forces which they are falling on the Earth and which the Earth is absorbing. It is only 25% of the energy of the sun's ray. The remaining 75% of solar energy, it is lost when the sun's ray, they enter the Earth's atmosphere. Okay. And whatever is remaining of, and it gets absorbed, of that also, again, 20% is lost in heat and light. So there are tremendous losses of solar forces. Very little gets absorbed. Okay, so even after such tremendous losses, the remaining energy, it is sufficient to nourish and recuperate the earth. We say that sunlight is the nourishment for everything, every kingdom that is evolving on earth. And Mahatma Ji says that this energy, which is nourishing the earth, recuperating the earth, it is the radiant energy of the sun. It is the all-pervading, the omnipresent one life. That is what is called in the esoteric doctrine. So this completes answer 12, and we move to the next question, question number 13. Now in this question, Sinet is asking, could any clue be given to the causes of magnetic variations, the daily changes at given places, and the apparently capricious curvature of the isogonic lines, which show equal declination? And he is giving an example that there is a region in Eastern Asia where the needle of the compass, it is aligned with the true north. But all other places which are around that region, they are showing a declination. So he's asking, have your lordships to do anything with it? Meaning, is it due to adepts doing some kind of occult phenomena? So before we move on to the answer, we must understand what is meant by magnetic declination. Okay, it is the angle between the magnetic north and the true north at a particular location on the Earth's surface. See, Earth has these the geographical North Pole and South Pole, which is its axial rotation, and then it also has the magnetic North Pole and South Pole, right? So the angle between the magnetic north and the true north, that is known as magnetic declination, because both the magnetic North Pole and the geographic North Pole, they are not aligned. There is an angle between them. That angle is called the magnetic declination. And isogonic lines are the lines on a map. They are imaginary lines which join all the places on the Earth's surface which have the same magnetic declination or same angle. Okay. So Mahatma Ji is answering his question that there exists strong magnetic poles above the surface of the Earth. Okay, this we know. One of these poles, it revolves around the North Pole in a periodical cycle of several hundred years. So the magnetic poles of the Earth, they are not fixed. In fact, the magnetic North Pole, it is revolving around the geographical North Pole in a periodic cycle of several hundred years, going around it. We also know that these magnetic poles in so many hundreds of years, they get reversed. The North Pole becomes the South Pole and vice versa. Remember, it is the magnetic poles which get reversed, not the axial poles. Okay. So this is the movement of the magnetic poles of the Earth. And when we take, we know that we can use a magnetic compass to find out the northern direction. And the needle of that compass, it will point to the North Pole. Right? Now, what will happen if a person is standing on the North Pole? Okay, so the Earth's magnetic north and the needle, the compass, its North Pole. So North Pole and North Pole, they will repel each other. In that case, where will the compass point? And here Mahatma Ji mentions it is true that the compass needle, it will point perpendicular down to the ground. Okay. Now this happened in a place called Bhutia. Bhutia, it is the peninsular and bay area in the Canadian Arctic region. Okay, Canadian. So it is to far north in northern hemisphere. And there this experiment was conducted. There was this person, Sir James Ross, who was the explorer. He located the magnetic north pole of the Earth. And when the magnetic compass was held over there, it pointed vertically down into the ground because of this repulsion, because like poles of the magnet, they repel each other. So it is natural and it is in conformance to the magnetic theory. The magnetic theory states that like poles repel and unlike poles attract. So that is the reason the north end of the compass needle, it is repelled by the Earth's north magnetic pole. So that is one part of the question. The other thing which Sinet asked, that there is a region in Eastern Asia where the needle does not show variation from true north. That means the magnetic needle and the true north of Earth, they are aligned. But there is a variation which is recorded in all other places which are around that particular place. Mahatma Ji says this has got nothing to do with the presence of the adepts or the Mahatmas in that region. That variation, it was due to the presence of certain metals. So you know that inside the Earth's surface, there are so many metal ores and other minerals. So the presence of certain metals was causing the alignment. But in other places where that metal was not present, there was an angle of declination. Now, if the temperature increases, then the magnetic attraction decreases. This we know. Take any magnetic substance. If we increase the temperature of that substance, then its magnetic property, it will become less and less. And in fact, as the temperature increases, that magnetic property will be destroyed altogether. Okay. So the temperature Mahatma Ji was speaking of in this present case, it was an aura or an emanation, perhaps of those metals which he mentioned, the metals which are present in that place. So because of that, because of the presence of that magnetic aura or emanation, there was no variation in the angle between the compass's needle and the true north. Okay, but he says that science does not have any knowledge about it. So Mahatma Ji advises Sinet that he should study magnetism with the help of occult doctrines. And whatever is appearing so difficult and incomprehensible or even absurd in the light of physical science, it will become crystal clear if he understands it with the help of occult doctrines. Even now, I'm sure that we would have to read the answer and this letter multiple times to really understand what answers Mahatma Ji is giving. Then we move on to question number 14, in which Sinet is asking, could any other planet besides those known to modern astronomy, can they be discovered by physical instruments if properly directed? Mahatma Ji is saying that yes, it may be possible to discover other planets. In fact, there exists intra-Mercurial planets. That means planets between the orbit of Mercury and the Sun. So there are planets even more closer to the Sun than Mercury. They are intra-Mercurial planets. And also there are planets in the orbit of Neptune, which have not yet been discovered. So it is possible to discover them. And the Mahatmas and the adepts, they know their existence and location for a fact. So it is not just a speculation. In fact, there are innumerable planets now which are in obscuration. That means obscuration means planets from which the life wave has already departed to the next globe in the planetary chain. Remember, every planet is septenary, so it is a planetary chain, and the life wave keeps moving from one globe to the next, just like it is happening on the Earth chain also. Similarly for other planets too. And many of such planets, they are in obscuration because the life wave has moved on to the next globe in that particular planet's planetary chain. So that planet, it stops emitting all light and it is a dark planet. Or it may emit extremely little radiation, which is not, which we are not able to detect. Hence, it is called dark planet. But in spite of that, Edison, Thomas Alva Edison, he had uh, invented the tachymeter. So what is tachymeter? It is an instrument which can detect and measure extremely small amounts, infinitesimal degrees of temperature changes, of temperatures, of heat. Okay, so Mahatma Ji says that Edison's tachymeter along with telescope, if these instruments, they are perfected and made more sensitive in their measurements, then they can be used for discovering such planets, which we do not know at present, and they are in obscuration. And how they can be discovered? Take the tachymeter and the telescope and point it in the sky. Suppose that space of sky, it is blank. There are no stars. Telescope is not discovering any stars in that space of the sky. But if the tachymeter is able to indicate an increase in temperature, okay, so telescope is not able to pinpoint any star, but in that same direction, tachymeter is indicating an increase in temperature, then this will be the proof of discovery of a stellar body. Why? Because even though that planet is in obscuration, it is possible it is emitting minute radiations, very small, infinitesimally small radiations. And the heat of that radiation, it will be detected by the tachymeter. So by this method, Mahatma Ji is telling Senate, by this method, it is possible for science to discover more planets of which it does not already know. And in fact, Thomas Alva Edison, he was a fellow of the Theosophical Society. And Mahatma Ji says he was a good deal protected by Mahatma M. So you see all these scientific discoveries, these inventions, which happened in the last 300 years, they were all happening under the influence of these adepts, of the adept hierarchy. Then Mahatma Ji, he says, he makes a prophecy that science will hear sounds from certain planets before they are seen. Okay. So this prophecy, it was fulfilled in 1931 after the discovery of star noise, the sound. And that was just an accidental discovery. There was this scientist, Carl Jansky. He built the first radio telescope so that that radio sound, that star noise, it was heard. And then the star was discovered. So this prophecy was fulfilled that science will hear sounds from certain planets before they become visible. So here the questions to physical science up to here Sinet has asked, and then further he is asking questions related to the after death states. Now previously there has been a letter in which Mahatma Ji has given in detail about the after death states. I think it was chronological letter number 70C. So now the next question, number 15, in that Sinet asks that when Mahatma Ji wrote, have you experienced monotony during that moment which you considered then and now so consider it as the highest moment of bliss you have ever felt? Did you refer to any specific moment and any specific event in my life, meaning Sinet's life? Or were you merely referring to an X quantity? That means the happiest moment, whatever it might have been. So this question will be clear if you refer back to chronological letter number 70C. And in that, Mahatma Ji had mentioned that the Devachanik state is the purely spiritual state of unalloyed bliss. Okay, so that Devachanik state, it could last from few to several thousand years in proportion to the good karma, in proportion to the intensity of the feelings that created that state. Okay, so Sinet might think that such a long period may become very monotonous, a period of intense bliss, but for so long, for thousands of years, it will become monotonous. So Mahatma Ji also said in that same letter, chronological letter 70C, he said that, did Sinet experience monotony in the moments of highest bliss? Of course not, right? It is very relative. when we are experiencing happy times, time just seems to fly. And when we are uh, relatively in a difficult situation, in misery, then the time does not seem to pass at all. So, based on this phenomena or based on this relativity, that when we experience the highest bliss, then time just seems to fly. So, also, there will be no monotony experienced in the Devachanic state, because Devachanic period is like a passage through eternity in which a million of years is no longer than a second, because it is a period of bliss, a period of good time, and good times pass just in a flash of an eye. So this will appear like no longer than a second in a passage through eternity. Okay, and Mahatma Ji had not made any reference to any specific moments of bliss about Sinet, but he left it to Sinet's own recollection or Sinet's own reminiscences of any quantity of happiness, whatever it might have been. Okay, so he says that every moral creature has such moments of relative happiness at some time in his life. So also Sinet must have had, and it is sure that he must not have felt them monotonous. So also he will not find the Devachanic period also monotonous. Then we move on to the next question, number 16. Sinet says, you say, that means Mahatma Ji says, remember we create ourselves, our Devachan and our Avichi, and mostly during the latter days and even moments of our sentient lives. So this question too, it is referring to the same chronological letter number 70C. Mahatma Ji tells Sinet about the Hindu belief that the future prenatal stage, okay, that means the next incarnation when it's going to happen, so the prenatal state and the future birth, they are all dependent on the last desire at the time of death. Okay, this last desire, they say, it is necessarily based upon the dying person's desires, passions, whatever he had during his life period. So whatever he aspired, desired during his life period, that based on that will be his last thoughts. And therefore one should carefully watch his actions and control his passions and desires throughout his whole life, because this will define his thoughts at the last moment, just before death. And these thoughts, they will decide the state of his prenatal and pre-birth state, in the future birth and the prenatal state. Therefore, his last desire, it should not be unfavorable to his future progress. And this is the reason that he should carefully watch his current actions and also control his emotions and desires in the present life. So you see, whatever we are doing in this life, it is so important. It is fashioning our future. It is even our last dying thoughts. They will be influenced or based upon whatever we have done throughout our life. So it is important that we watch our thoughts, actions, emotions at every moment. Next, Sinet asks, but do the thoughts on which the mind may be engaged at the last moment necessarily hinge on to the predominant character of its past life? Otherwise, it would seem as if the character of the person's Devachan or Avichi might be capriciously and unjustly determined by the chance which brought some special thought uppermost at last. So he's asking the Mahatma that is it necessary that our last thoughts will be based upon the predominant character of our life? Or is it just a chance thought which comes to the dying person? So Mahatma Ji affirms that it is so and it cannot be otherwise, meaning that the last thoughts necessarily are determined by the predominant character of the person's past life. Now, this is an affirmation and it is so important. What are we doing with our present life? Because based on that will be the last thoughts. And the last thoughts will influence the future states and the future incarnation. So this has been actually confirmed by many people who have had near-death experiences. They were almost pronounced clinically dead by the doctor, but they revived and came back to life, and they confirmed this doctrine. Such thoughts, they are involuntarily. We cannot say that, okay, this is what I'm going to think when I will be dying, in the dying state. No, the thoughts which come in the dying state, they are involuntary, and the dying person has no control over them. At the last moment, the entire life, it is reflected in our memory, picture by picture. Even the forgotten details of our life, which we don't remember now, that too is reflected. In fact, it is like the dying brain, it dislodges the entire memory with a strong, supreme impulse because it is dying. And memory will faithfully restore every impression which had been imprinted on it during the period of the brain's activity, meaning during the lifetime of that person. So all those memories, they come flooding back. And that impression and thought, which was the strongest, naturally it becomes the most vivid, and it will survive all the other impressions, all the other memories, and it will reappear again in Devachan. Okay, the strongest impression, the strongest thought. And all the remaining thoughts, they will vanish and disappear forever. Mahatma Ji says that no man dies insane or unconscious. We might think that some person, if he's a lunatic, if he's a madman, or some person, if he's unconscious or in a coma, or maybe some person who was a drinking or a drug addict and he's suffering from withdrawal symptoms and say he dies. So such persons may not have their memory recollection at the dying moment. It is not like that. No person dies unconscious. Even if the person is appearing dead, like he's in coma, even then, between his last heartbeat and the moment when the pranic energy leaves the body, so between these two moments, the heartbeat stops and the pranic energy leaves the body. Between these two moments, the brain thinks and the ego lives over, in that few seconds, his entire life over again. You see, it might be such a tiny fraction of time, only a few moments between the last heartbeat and the moment when pranic energy leaves the body. The ego lives over those few brief seconds his whole life over again. We are living our life in so many years, but the entire thing flashes in just those two moments in its entire details. Even the forgotten incidents, even they come to life. Then, as death comes to a person, all those who are around him, they are advised to keep quiet or to talk in whispers so that they don't disturb this quiet ripple of thoughts of the dying person. Because by doing so, they will hinder his train of thoughts. And in those last thoughts, the past of that person, it is casting a reflection upon the veil of the future. Those past thoughts are going to influence his future states. So that train of thought, it must not be disturbed. That is why we are advised to keep quiet at the dying moment of any person. This completes answer 17, and we go on to the next question, question number 18. Sinet asks Mahatma Ji, the full remembrance of our lives will come but at the end of the minor cycle. So does minor cycle here mean one round or the whole manvantar of our planetary chain? That is, do we remember our past life in the Devachan of the world Z at the end of each round, or only at the end of 7th round? Now, if you remember the chains and the rounds, the life wave goes around all 7 globes of the earth once, that is called one round, and it does so 7 times. So that is the full 7 rounds. And Mahatma Ji answers that yes, the full remembrance of our collective life, it will return back at the end of all 7 rounds. Humanity and mass, it will have reached the stage of Buddhahood. This is mentioned in some other letter that at the end of the 7 rounds, humanity and mass, all the people, or the entire humanity, it will have reached the stage of Buddhahood at the end of 7 rounds. And thereafter it enters the state of Nirvana. When it leaves the last globe or the 7th globe in the 7th round, that is called globe globe Z. Okay. So, and after that, Earth will enter into planetary pralay at the end of 7 rounds. So during that time, at that moment, the full remembrance of our collective lives of all the 7 rounds, it will return just before this planetary pralay, just before humanity enters nirvana. Now, this will happen at the end of 7 rounds. Sorry. Now, what happens at the end of each individual round? At the end of each individual round, we remember the sum total of our last impressions, those that we had selected, or rather those impressions which followed us in Devachan. So throughout this round, whatever impressions have been with us during Devachan, they will be remembered at the end of every individual round. So it is like all the previous rounds, they are like probation for us. Now this we are talking of the 7th round. Okay, at the end of the 7th round. What happens at the end of 7th round? All these previous rounds, they have been like a probationary period. And in every new life, we face new tests and new trials, just like we face the tests on probationary path of chelaship. But at the end of 7 rounds, that means at the close of the minor cycle, when all the 7 rounds are completed, then there is no more opportunity for us to try. Right? All these previous rounds, they are our probationary period. Because after that, humanity enters Buddhahood. So it is like a probationary period for Buddhahood, not for chelaship, but for Buddhahood. And at the end of 7 rounds, there is no more time, no more opportunity for us to try. That is why you see in every letter, Mahatmaji, almost in many of his letters, Mahatmaji says, try. He tells us, keep on trying, try. So after the 7 rounds are complete, there awaits the great law of retributive justice. That means the great law of karma. On which scale, on that scale of karma, our good meritorious deeds are weighed against the demerits of our evil deeds. So this is happening at the end of 7 rounds. Okay, and that ego, which was totally under the sway of the 4th principle, calm, and that ego did not respond even the tiniest of bit, not even a mite, to the higher light of the 5th principle, that is the Mansik principle. Such a ego is irretrievably bad. It has to be annihilated, and it disappears in the 8th sphere, Avicci. Okay, 8th sphere is Avicci. It is basically the antithesis or counterpart of Devachan. So during the rounds and the personal lives, if the person, he responds to his higher manas, to the influence from the Mansik principle, even one small bit, even one single time, then he can be saved from the awful state of Avicci. But at the end of 7 rounds, there is no more opportunity, there is no more time, there will be no more evolution on this earth. The earth chain will complete. So at that time, for the good ego, it will be a long nirvana of bliss. And thereafter, he will have life as a Dhyan Chauhan for one entire Manvantar. But for the failed ego, Mahatmaji does not mention the term for that ego, who has been totally bad for all these 7 rounds and not been influenced by the higher manas. So he does not even want to mention the term, as it is best not to utter it or even hear that term. So I am just using the term failed ego. So for such failed egos which have been described above, the equivalent of nirvanic period will be avicci. Avicci is the antithesis of Devachan. And such a ego will face a manvantar of misery and horror. The failed egos who sink to that eighth sphere, they have nothing to do with the human mortals who are evolving on these seven globes of the earth chain. As Mahatma Ji has previously mentioned, that in the seventh round, from the ranks of the adepts, there will arise the future planetary, the future Manu. It has the most spiritual and the most lovely collective karma of all its previous collective lives. Okay, so it is from the humanity itself, the ego which has the most spiritual and most lovely of the collective karma, he becomes the future planetary. That means the seed Manu who will, and then there will be there is the seed Manu and the root Manu for the next round. Okay, so in contrast of the collective karma of a failed ego, which is terrible. So in one case, the ego becomes a planetary, the most spiritual ego. And in the other case, a failed ego, it becomes a denizen of that eighth sphere, which has a terrible fate to undergo for the entire Manvantar. So we'll come to a stop now. We have completed 18 questions. And today we have with us Sister Sushma ji. I request her to give us the translation in Hindi. Dr. Sushma Srivastav, request you to give us the translation in Hindi. I think Sushma ji is not available.
She is there, madam.
Not responding. Okay, please give me a moment. Perhaps I will call her. Meanwhile, if there are any questions, then you may kindly write in the chat or raise your hand, and I will try to get in touch with Sushma ji. Okay, Sushma ji has said she will try to rejoin again. Yes, Sushma ji, request you to give us the translation in Hindi. Please unmute yourself.
जी, मैं पिछले प्रश्न के कंटिन्यूशन बता रही हूँ। मास्टर्स कहते हैं कि न तो चैल्डीज और न ही हमारे प्राचीन काल के ऋषियों के पास आज जैसी दूरबीनें थी, फिर भी उनके खगोलीय भविष्यवाणी अचूक थी। गलतियां सच में बहुत मामूली होती थी। मास्टर्स सीनेट साहब को कहते हैं कि आपके छोटे प्रश्नों पर मेरे बहुत लंबे उत्तरों के लिए आप शिकायत न करें, क्योंकि मैं आपको गुह विद्या के एक छात्र के रूप में निर्देश देने के लिए उत्तर दे रहा हूं। मैं मॉडर्न लर्निंग के संबंध में विज्ञान पढ़ाने वाला व्यक्ति नहीं हूँ। पश्चिमी विज्ञान के बारे में मेरा ज्ञान बहुत सीमित है और आप कृपया ध्यान रखें कि मेरे सभी उत्तर पौर्वात्य गुह्य शास्त्रों पर आधारित हैं। इस संदर्भ में मास्टर्स कहते हैं कि मेरा कहना है विद इन इन्वर्टेड कॉमा, सूर्य की सतह प्रति वर्ग मील उतना ही प्रकाश उत्सर्जित करती है जितना किसी भी पिंड से उत्सर्जित हो सकता है। लेकिन इस मामले में आपका प्रकाश से क्या मतलब है? यह प्रकाश कोई स्वतंत्र तत्व नहीं है जिसे हम आकाश कहते हैं। यह कोई आपका ईथर नहीं है। प्रत्येक घटना उसकी विविध गतिविधियों का परिणाम है। प्रारंभ में वास्तव में एक ही मूल तत्व था जो सभी का कारक सिद्धांत है। विज्ञान के प्रकाश के वेग को मापने का कोई निश्चित साधन अभी तक नहीं मिला है। फिर वो कहते हैं, सीनेट दूसरा प्रश्न करते हैं कि क्या जुपिटर एक गर्म और अभी भी आंशिक रूप से चमकदार पिंड है और उसका क्या कारण है? क्या बृहस्पति के वायुमंडल में प्रचंड उथल पुथल अपेक्षित है? इस प्रश्न के उत्तर पे मास्टर्स कहते हैं, हाँ अभी तक है, लेकिन वह तेजी से बदल रहा है। मेरा मानना है कि आपके विज्ञान का एक सिद्धांत है कि यदि पृथ्वी को उदाहरण के तौर पर अत्यधिक ठंडे क्षेत्र में रख दिया जाए, यदि यह पृथ्वी बृहस्पति के साथ साथ स्थान बदलती है, तो हमारे सभी समुद्र और नदियां अचानक ठोस पहाड़ों में बदल जाते। हवा या वायु रूपी पदार्थों का एक हिस्सा जो इसे बनाता है, वह गर्मी के अभाव में अदृश्य तरल पदार्थ की स्थिति से तरल पदार्थ में रूपांतरित हो जाएगा, जो अब बृहस्पति पर मौजूद है, लेकिन पृथ्वी के लोगों को बारे में इसकी कोई जानकारी नहीं है। हम इसे समझे या विपरीत स्थिति की कल्पना करने का प्रयास करें और वह वर्तमान समय में बृहस्पति की स्थिति होगी। फिर मास्टर्स कहते हैं कि हमारा पूरा सोलर सिस्टम अंतरिक्ष में अदृश्य रूप से अपनी स्थिति बदल रहा है। ग्रहों के बीच की सापेक्ष दूरी हमेशा समान रहती है और पूरे सिस्टम के स्थानांतरण से किसी भी तरह से प्रभावित नहीं होती है। हमारे सिस्टम और हमारे तारों और अन्य सूर्यों के बीच की दूरी इतनी अधिक है कि आने वाली सदियों और सहस्राब्दियों तक कोई प्रत्यक्ष परिवर्तन नहीं हो सकता। कोई भी खगोल शास्त्री इस दूरबीन को नहीं देख पाएगा जब तक कि बृहस्पति और कुछ अन्य ग्रह, जिनके छोटे चमकदार बिंदु अब हमारी दृष्टि से लाखों करोड़ों तारे छिपाते हैं, कुछ 5,000 या 6,000 को छोड़कर, वे अचानक से हमें कुछ ना कुछ राज सूर्यों की झलक पाने देंगे जिन्हें अभी तक वे छिपाए हुए हैं। बृहस्पति के ठीक पीछे एक ऐसा ही किंग स्टार है, यानी राज सूर्य है, जिसे इस राउंड के दौरान किसी नश्वर भौतिक आंखों से कभी नहीं देखा गया है। इसे इस प्रकार समझा जा सकता है कि 10,000 गुना व्यास की क्षमता वाली उत्तम दूरबीन के माध्यम से वह फिर भी एक छोटा सा आकार विहीन बिंदु ही दिखेगा, जो किसी भी ग्रह की चमक से छायांकित रहेगा। फिर भी यह दुनिया बृहस्पति से हजारों गुना बड़ी है। इसके वायुमंडल में प्रचंड उथल पुथल है और यहाँ तक कि इसका लाल धब्बा वैज्ञानिकों को अभी तक रोचक लगता है, और जिसके निम्न कारण है। पहला, उसके स्थानांतरण के कारण। दूसरा, राज स्टार के प्रभाव के कारण। अंतरिक्ष में इसकी वर्तमान स्थिति चाहे कितनी भी न्यून क्यों न हो, अगोचर हो, लेकिन वह मुख्य रूप से जिन धातुओं से बना है वे विस्तारित हो रहे हैं और धीरे धीरे वायु रूपीय तरल पदार्थ से बदल रहे हैं और उसके वातावरण का हिस्सा बन रहे हैं, जैसा कि फर्स्ट राउंड के पहले हमारी पृथ्वी और 6 सिस्टर ग्लोब्स की स्थिति थी। गुरुदेव मिस्टर सिनेट से कहते हैं कि मेरे ले चेला, इससे आप अनुमान और निष्कर्ष निकालें, लेकिन सावधान रहें, नहीं तो ऐसा करते समय आप अपने विनीत प्रशिक्षक और गुह्य सिद्धांतों को अपनी आधुनिक विज्ञान की क्रुद्ध देवी पर बलिदान कर देंगे। 12वां प्रश्न एपी सिनेट करते हैं कि क्या सोलर कंबंशन यानी सौर दहन कि इस नई सीमेंस थ्योरी में कोई सच्चाई है, यानी कि अंतरिक्ष में मार्ग क्रमण करते हुए सूर्य ध्रुवों पर ज्वलनशील गैस एकत्रित करता है, या जो अत्यधिक कम घनत्व रूप में पूरे अंतरिक्ष में फैल जाता है और फिर उसे इक्वेटर यानी भूमध्य रेखा पर प्रक्षेपित करता है। जब इस क्षेत्र की तेज गर्मी के बाद उन तत्वों को पुनः बिखेरता है तो वह अस्थायी रूप से उससे जुड़ जाते हैं। गुरुदेव इसका उत्तर देते हैं, नहीं, इसमें कोई सच्चाई नहीं है, क्योंकि हमारा सूर्य मात्र एक प्रतिबिंब है। सीमंस द्वारा कहा गया एकमात्र सत्य यह है कि इंटरस्टेलर स्पेस अत्यंत कम घनत्व वाले पदार्थ से भरा है और उसे वायु की वैक्यूम ट्यूब में रखा जा सकता है, और जो एक ग्रह से दूसरे ग्रह और एक तारे से दूसरे तारे तक फैला होता है। सूर्य अपनी प्रणाली को सब कुछ देता है और वह उससे कुछ भी ग्रहण नहीं करता। सूर्य ध्रुवों पर कुछ भी इकट्ठा नहीं करता, जो केवल ग्रहण के समय के दौरान ही नहीं बल्कि हर समय प्रख्यात लाल ज्वालाओं से भी मुक्त रहता है। फिर मास्टर कहते हैं, विश्वों के निर्माण में यानी वर्ल्ड इन फॉर्मेशन में सूर्य के पुनर्नवीन नवजीवन में विभिन्न असंख्य प्रणालियों की जीवन शक्ति रहती है और अपनी सभी 7 अवस्थाओं में पदार्थ का प्रत्येक कण आवश्यक है। फिर गुरुदेव कहते हैं कि रेडियंट एनर्जी का नवीनतम सिद्धांत दर्शाता है कि प्रकृति में केमिकल लाइट यानी रासायनिक प्रकाश का या ऊष्मा किरण जैसी कोई चीज नहीं है। यही एकमात्र लगभग सही सिद्धांत है। वास्तव में तथ्य यह है कि रेडियंट एनर्जी जो अक्षय है, न तो बढ़ती है और न घटती है, और सौर मनवंतर के अंत तक वह अपने स्वयं निर्माण कार्य के साथ चलती रहेगी। पृथ्वी द्वारा सौर ऊर्जा का अवशोषण प्रचंड है, फिर भी यह इस तरह से प्रदर्शित किया जा सकता है कि पृथ्वी मुश्किल से सूर्य के किरणों की रासायनिक शक्ति का 25% प्राप्त करती है, क्योंकि इसका 75% उस दौरान नष्ट हो जाता है जब वह हवाई महासागर की बाहरी सीमा तक पहुंचते समय वायुमंडल के में लैब रूप में गुजरती है और इसकी किरणों की लगभग 20% रोशनी अपनी उष्णता खो देती है। इसी तरह की क्षति के साथ हमारे माता पिता यानी फादर मदर सूर्य की पुनरुत्पादक शक्ति क्या होगी, आप चाहें तो इसे तेजस्वी ऊर्जा कहें। हम इसे सूर्य की महान प्रयोगशाला में सदा कार्यरत सर्वव्यापी जीवन चेतना ही कहेंगे। अगला प्रश्न है, एपी सिनेट कहते हैं कि क्या चुंबकीय परिवर्तनों के कारण कोई सुराग दिया जा सकता है, जैसे कि किसी स्थान पर रोजाना परिवर्तन और समचुंबकीय रेखाओं की अस्थिर वक्रता जो समान झुकाव को दिखाती है। उदाहरण के तौर पर पूर्वी एशिया में एक ऐसा क्षेत्र क्यों है जहां चुंबकीय सुई सही सही यानी सटीक उत्तर दिशा में कोई परिवर्तन नहीं दिखाती, जबकि इस स्थान के चारों ओर परिवर्तन दर्ज किए जाते हैं। क्या महात्माओं को इस अजीब स्थिति से कोई लेना देना है? गुरुदेव उत्तर देते हैं कि आपके वैज्ञानिकों द्वारा कभी भी कुछ भी सुराग नहीं दिया जा सकता। जिनकी उद्दंडता यह घोषित करती है कि केवल वे लोग जिनके लिए चुंबकत्व यह शब्द एक रहस्य है, यह धारणा है कि सूर्य एक विशाल चुंबक है, वही उस प्रकाश के गर्मी और हमारी पृथ्वी पर देखी गई चुंबकीय विविधताओं का हिसाब लगा सकते हैं। वे आरएस के जेंकिंस द्वारा सुझाए गए इस सिद्धांत को कि पृथ्वी की सतह के ऊपर प्रचंड चुंबकीय ध्रुवों का अस्तित्व है, इसे अनदेखा और अस्वीकार करने पर यह वैज्ञानिक दृढ़ है। लेकिन यह सिद्धांत फिर भी सही है और उनमें से एक ध्रुव कई सौ वर्षों के पीरियोडिकल साइकिल में उत्तरी ध्रुव के चारों ओर घूमता है। जेंकिंस के अलावा हेली और हैंडस्टीन ही एकमात्र ऐसे वैज्ञानिक थे जिन्होंने इसके बारे में सोचा। जेंकिंस ने लगभग 3 साल पहले यह साबित करने की पूरी कोशिश की थी कि सुई का उत्तरी छोर ही सही उत्तरी ध्रुव है, न कि इसके उल्टा, जैसा कि वर्तमान के वैज्ञानिक कहते हैं। उन्हें सूचित किया गया कि बूथिया का वह इलाका जहां सर जेम्स रॉस ने पृथ्वी के उत्तरी चुंबकीय ध्रुव को खोज निकाला था, वो पूरी तरह से काल्पनिक था। वहां ऐसी स्थिति थी ही नहीं। यदि वह जेम्स रॉस और हम गलत हैं, सब ध्रुवों के विकर्षण और विपरीत ध्रुवों के आकर्षण करने के चुंबकीय सिद्धांत को भी भ्रांत धारणा घोषित करना चाहिए। इसके बाद मास्टर्स कहते हैं कि और अगर वहां इसे आकर्षित करने के लिए कुछ है, तो ऐसा क्यों है कि लंदन में सुई न तो भूथिया में जमीन की ओर आकर्षित होती है और न ही पृथ्वी के केंद्र की ओर। जैसा कि बिल्कुल सही तर्क किया गया है कि यदि सुई का उत्तरी ध्रुव भूथिया के लगभग लंबवत रूप से जमीन की ओर इशारा करता है, तो यह सिर्फ इसलिए है क्योंकि ये सही उत्तरीय चुंबकीय ध्रुव द्वारा आकर्षित किया गया था जब सर जे रॉस लगभग आधी सदी पहले वहां थे। नहीं तो हमारे लॉर्डशिप यानी गुरुदेव के लिए कहा गया है का सुई के निष्क्रियता से कोई लेना देना नहीं है। ऐसा इस इलाके में कोई सम्मिश्रित धातुओं की मौजूदगी के कारण होता है। तापमान में वृद्धि से चुंबकीय आकर्षण हो जाता है और बहुत अधिक उच्च तापमान अक्सर इसे पूर्णतः नष्ट भी कर देता है। और जिस तापमान की बात कर रहा हूं वह एक आभा है, ऑरा है, उत्सर्जन है, जिसे इस स्थिति में विज्ञान को कुछ भी ज्ञात नहीं। मास्टर्स ने जैसे पहले ही कहा कि मैं आपके छोटे प्रश्नों का उत्तर मैं बहुत विस्तार रूप में दूंगा क्योंकि ये गुह्य सिद्धांत है। मास्टर कहते हैं कि गुह्य सिद्धांतों की सहायता से चुंबकत्व का अध्ययन करें और फिर जो कुछ भी भौतिक विज्ञान के प्रकाश में समझ सकें, तभी वह स्पष्ट हो सकेगा। 14वां प्रश्न है, एपिसिनेट करते हैं गुरुदेव से, क्या आधुनिक खगोल शास्त्र में ज्ञात ग्रहों के अलावा कोई अन्य ग्रह भौतिक उपकरणों द्वारा खोजा जा सकता है? यदि उसे ठीक से निर्देशित किया जाए तो? गुरुदेव कहते हैं हाँ, ऐसा हो सकता है। न तो अभी तक सूर्य और मरकरी के बीच वाले सभी ग्रह और न ही नेपच्यून की कक्षा में मौजूद ग्रह खोजे गए हैं। हालांकि इसे अनुमानित किया जा रहा है। ऐसे ग्रह अस्तित्व में हैं और वे कहाँ मौजूद हैं इससे हम जानते हैं। वे कहते हैं कि असंख्य ग्रह दग्ध हो गए हैं, यानी बर्न्ड आउट हो गए हैं। हम कहते हैं कि वो प्रच्छन्न है, छिपे हुए हैं, यानी तब ग्रह जो अभी तक प्रकाशमान नहीं हुए हैं आदि। लेकिन हम जो जानते हैं उससे विज्ञान को ज्यादा लाभ नहीं होगा जब तक कि आध्यात्मवादी हमारे ज्ञान को स्वीकार नहीं करेंगे। वे कहते हैं कि और थॉमस एडिसन का टेसीमीटर जो अपनी सूक्ष्म ग्रहिता के उच्चतम स्तर तक समायोजित किया गया है और एक बड़ी दूरबीन से जुड़ा है, लेकिन जो जब वो पूर्ण रूप से एडवांस हो जाएगा तो बहुत उपयोगी हो सकता है। इस प्रकार किसे जुड़कर जो है वो न केवल सबसे दूरस्थ दृश्यमान तारे की गर्मी मापने की संभावना प्रदान करेगा, अपितु उनके अदृश्य विकिरणों द्वारा उन तारों का पता लगाने में भी सक्षम होगा जो गोचर नहीं है और हमारे ध्यान में नहीं आते हैं, और इसी तरह ग्रहों का भी पता लगेगा। एपी सिनेट 15वां प्रश्न करते हैं कि क्या आपने इस क्षण के दौरान एक रास्ता या नीरसता का अनुभव किया है जिसे आप अब तक सबसे उच्चतम आनंद का क्षण मानते हैं? ऐसा जब आपने लिखा तब क्या आपने मेरे जीवन के किसी विशिष्ट क्षण और किसी विशिष्ट घटना का उल्लेख किया था जो सबसे सुखद क्षण या चाहे कुछ भी रहा हो? मास्टर कहते हैं नहीं मेरे अच्छे मित्र, मैं उन सबके जैसा नासमझ नहीं हूं। मैंने बस तुम्हें तुम्हारी यादों के हवाले छोड़ दिया है। प्रत्येक नश्वर प्राणी, यहाँ तक कि सबसे अभागे प्राणी के जीवन में भी किसी न किसी समय ऐसे खुशी के क्षण आते हैं, तो फिर आपके लिए क्यों नहीं आएंगे? मिस्टर सेनेट 15वां प्रश्न करते हैं। वह कहते हैं कि आप कहते हैं कि याद रखें कि हम स्वयं के लिए अपना देवाचन और अविची बनाते हैं, और ज्यादातर अपने आखिरी दिनों में और अपने जीवित काल के क्षणों के दौरान भी। इस प्रश्न के उत्तर में गुरुदेव कहते हैं कि यह हिंदुओं के बीच व्यापक रूप से मान्यता है कि किसी व्यक्ति के भविष्य में होने वाले जन्म के पूर्व की स्थिति और उसका भावी जन्म उसकी मृत्यु के समय की अंतिम इच्छा से निर्धारित होता है। लेकिन वे कहते हैं कि उस व्यक्ति ने अपने पिछले जीवन के दौरान अपनी इच्छाओं आदि को क्या आकार, क्या रूप दिया है, इस पर उसकी अंतिम इच्छा अनिवार्यतः निर्भर करती है। हमारी अंतिम इच्छा हमारे भावी प्रगति के लिए प्रतिकूल न हो, इस कारण से हमें अपने संपूर्ण सांसारिक जीवन में अपने कार्यों पर नजर रखनी होगी और अपनी लालसा और अपनी इच्छाओं को नियंत्रित करना होगा। मिस्टर सिनेट अगला प्रश्न करते हैं, लेकिन क्या अंतिम क्षण में मन जिन विचारों में मग्न रहता है, क्या वे अवश्य उसके पिछले जन्म के प्रमुख स्वरूप पर निर्भर करते हैं? अन्यथा ऐसा प्रतीत होता है जैसे कि किसी व्यक्ति के देवाचन या अभिचि का स्वरूप संयोग से जानबूझकर आखिरी समय में कुछ विशेष विचार लेकर निर्धारित किया गया हो। गुरुदेव कहते हैं, नहीं, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता। डूबने और अन्य दुर्घटनाओं से मरने वाले लोगों के को जब पुनः जीवित होने पर उनसे अनुभव लिया गया, तो लगभग सभी ने हर मामले में हमारे सिद्धांत की पुष्टि की है। इस तरह के विचार अनैच्छिक होते हैं, उन पर हमारा उतना नियंत्रण नहीं होता जितना कि इन आंखों की रेटिना पर होता है, ताकि वह उस रंग को ना देख सकें जो सबसे अधिक प्रभावित करता है। अंतिम क्षण में हमारा पूरा जीवन हमारी स्मृति में प्रतिबिंबित होता है और सभी भूले बिसरे कोने कोने से एक के बाद एक चित्र जो है घटनाएं हमारे सामने आती हैं और मस्तिष्क की सक्रियता उस दौरान बढ़ जाती है। उसके प्रत्येक जो है वह प्रतिबिंब वह मस्तिष्क ईमानदारी से पुनर्स्थापित करता है। वह धारणा और विचार जो स्वभावतः सबसे प्रबल थे, सबसे सुस्पष्ट हो जाते हैं। वह कायम रहता है, जबकि उसके सभी अन्य विचार गायब हो जाते हैं और देवाचन में प्रकट होता है। कोई भी व्यक्ति स्मृति भ्रंश होकर या बेहोश होकर नहीं मरता, जैसा कि आजकल कई आधुनिक चिकित्सक दावा करते हैं। यहाँ तक कि एक पागल व्यक्ति भी या प्रलाप की स्थिति में कांपता हुआ वह व्यक्ति भी मृत्यु के क्षण में तुरंत पूर्णतः स्पष्टता प्राप्त कर लेता है, भले वह उपस्थित लोगों से ऐसा कहने में असमर्थ हो। वह व्यक्ति मरा हुआ प्रतीत हो सकता है, फिर भी उसके आखिरी स्पंदन से हृदय की आखिरी और उस क्षण के बीच जब उसकी उष्णता की आखिरी चमक शरीर छोड़ती है, तब मस्तिष्क सोचता है और जीवात्मा उन कुछ अल्प क्षणों में अपने पूरे जीवन को फिर से जीवित कर देता है। इसलिए कहा गया है कि गुरुदेव कहते हैं कि ऐसे क्षण में जब व्यक्ति मृत्युशैया पर है तो धीरे स्वर में बोलें, अन्यथा आप विचार की शांत लहर में बाधा लाएंगे और भविष्य के पर्दे पर अतीत के प्रतिबिंब को ढालने में जो मृत व्यक्ति व्यस्त है उस कार्य में बाधा डालेंगे। आगे का प्रश्न है, क्या हमारे जीवन की पूर्ण स्मृति माइनर साइकिल के अंत में आएगी? क्या यह माइनर साइकिल का अर्थ एक राउंड है या हमारे प्लेनेटरी चेंज की पूर्ण मनवंतर है? अर्थात क्या हम प्रत्येक राउंड के अंत में WZ के देवाचन में अपने पिछले जन्मों को याद करते हैं या केवल 7वें राउंड के अंत में याद करते हैं? इस पर मास्टर उत्तर देते हैं, हाँ, हमारे संपूर्ण जीवनों की पूर्ण स्मृति सभी 7 राउंड के अंत में दीर्घ काल के निर्वाण के प्रारंभ में वापस आएंगी, जो हमें ग्लोब Z छोड़ने के उपरांत प्राप्त होगी। प्रत्येक राउंड के अंत में हमारे पिछले इंप्रेशंस का कुल योग याद आएगा, जिन्हें हमने चुना था, जो देवाचन में स्वयं हमारे पीछे आए सभी जीवन परीक्षमान यानी प्रोबेशन पीरियड के अधीन है और नए जीवन के साथ हमें नए ट्रायल्स मिलते हैं। लेकिन माइनर साइकिल के अंत में सभी 7 राउंड के पूरा होने के बाद कोई और दया हम पर नहीं बरसेगी। बस अच्छे कार्यों का, योग्यताओं का जो योग है वह तराजू में बुरे कर्मों और अवगुणों से अधिक होना चाहिए। यही हमारी उपलब्धि है। असाध्य रूप से बुरी वह जीवात्मा है जिसने अपने 5वें तत्व यानी मनस प्रिंसिपल का कुछ भी प्राप्त न किया हो और जिसे 8th स्फीयर में लुप्त हो जाने के लिए मिटा दिया हो। कुछ अल्प मात्रा में, जैसे कि मैं कहता हूं कि पर्सनल ईगो से एकत्रित इस नीरस भाग्य से बचाने के लिए पर्याप्त है। ग्रेट साइकिल के पूरा होने के बाद या तो परमानंद दीर्घ निर्वाण प्राप्त होगा या हमारी अपरिष्कृत अवधारणा के अनुसार अचेतनता की स्थिति होगी, या जिसके बाद संपूर्ण मनवंतर के लिए ध्यानी चौहान के रूप में भी जीवन हो सकता है। और यह भी हो सकता है कि हम उस दुर्गति में हों, लेकिन गुरुदेव कहते हैं कि मैं वो शब्द न तो मैं आपको सुनाना चाहता हूं और न ही मैं से उसका उच्चारण करना चाहता हूं और न ही मुझे लिखना चाहिए, लेकिन उन नश्वर जीवों से मुझे कुछ लेना देना नहीं। जिस यहाँ समाप्त होता है, जो मुझे मीनाक्षी जी ने इतना सुंदर अनुवाद करके दिया था, मैंने उसकी प्रस्तुति की है। धन्यवाद।
Thank you so much, Sushma ji, for giving us this translation. I know it is a very difficult task. Thank you for being with us today. And if there are any questions, although we are much past our time, but still if there are any questions on what we covered today, we can take now. This letter still has several questions. We have completed the part where Senate is asking questions on physical science relating to the sun and light, solar radiation, and the solar system. And now the next set of questions, it is based on after death states. So this we will continue in future sessions. Thank you all for being with us today. We will close the session with our closing prayer. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Sarvesham Swastirabhavatu Sarvesham Shantirabhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste and thank you all for joining.
थैंक यू विभा जी। बहुत कठिन जो है आपने इतना सरलीकरण किया, इतने